The Caretaker. I'm getting too old for this, Caretaker grumbled, bashing in the heads of the two goons. A pry bar hit him over the head, making ringing sounds in his ears like a tuning fork. He turned to the man, completely unaffected. Did you really think that would work against me? He grabbed the attacker by the belt and threw him directly upwards, into the atmosphere. Caretaker had grown tired of it all. The heinous crimes he had dealt with recently had left a bitter taste in his mouth. Every time he remembered the horrific child killer case, he threw up a little. The bad guy literally named himself the child killer. Not to mention the cannibal gang that shook the city's core, with a whopping victim count of over 1,000 people. It took him over a month to track all of those psychos down. The idea of retirement had been brewing in the back of his mind for a while now. He'd been a paragon of justice for decades, but with the state of the world as it was, the effort was starting to seem like a Sisyphean task. It wasn't enough to simply lock these monsters away. Something needed to change. An idea popped into his head as he was tying up the surviving criminals for the police. It was a small, radical idea, but it began to grow over the coming weeks. The idea was too radical to bring up with any of the other members of the superhero coalition. However, he knew exactly who he could talk to about his plans: an old adversary, Data Demon. Data Demon was a unique case. Unlike the others Caretaker had put away, Data Demon was not a villain in the traditional sense. His plan had been to expose the corruption of the powerful and redistribute wealth, but his methodology had been too extreme. Now, years later, the former villain was a model prisoner, having swapped his plans of digital domination for maintaining the prison garden. Data Demon was lying in his cell, trying to get comfortable on his lumpy mattress. Suddenly, the thick metal door was no longer there. It had been ripped away by a man dressed all in black, wearing a black balaclava, but also hovering a foot off the ground. The floating man lifted his mask, whispering to Data Demon, "Hey, look! It's me. Caretaker?" He was not dressed in his iconic suit, but somehow Caretaker had infiltrated the high-security prison with a plan to break out this criminal he had put there a decade ago. The prison was no match for this god, who was able to take out the guards and smash through the walls like they were paper. Caretaker now stood over the convict, brushing the concrete dust from his clothes. "I haven't done anything," Data Demon stammered. "I've been good. Just trying to serve my time, I swear. Listen, I want you to do something for me. I didn't outright kill or maim you when I caught you, so I think you kind of owe me." Caretaker continued to whisper. "You're working with bad guys now?" DD was very confused. You're not really a supervillain," Caretaker said as he moved toward DD and lifted him up. "You're more of an anti-villain, and you're really the only person who can do what I need." And with that, Caretaker took DD in one arm and jumped through the ceiling, busting through several floors before they were in the open air. DD watched as the prison quickly disappeared into the horizon. Within minutes, they were at the safe house, a small airport hangar in a bland Midwestern city. Hidden in boring anonymity. DD was shivering, with a ringing in his ears after flying across 3 states, as he shouted, "Do you really think that no one will know that Caretaker broke me out of prison? You took out all the guards, crashed through the roof, and flew off. How many other people in the world could do that?" Caretaker sighed and shook his head. "Don't worry about it." Calmly, Caretaker explained his plan, taking his time to make sure he didn't sound like he was having a psychotic break. The concept was definitely psychotic. DD would construct an AI that could evaluate every human based on their social media content, online records, and personal information. The AI would rank everyone, and those who fell below a certain moral threshold would be targeted by nanobots and disassembled at an atomic level. Data Demon laughed. "So who is determining goodness level? You, who are clearly psychotic, or me, a supervillain whose last name is Demon?" "The AI, of course," Caregiver replied. Data Demon now knew exactly why he had been chosen. He had previously created exactly such an AI to erase bank accounts of the corrupt and wealthy, but his plan had been derailed by Caretaker before it could come to fruition. As Data Demon worked on his end of the plan, Caretaker engaged in subterfuge, distracting the coalition of superheroes and acquiring the nanobots. The technology had been confiscated from a deceased villain known for his nanotech expertise. Dee looked at the tech and he was sure he could reprogram the nanobots with a bit of time and research. Over the next few weeks, the two previous enemies bonded. Dee grew excited at the thought of weeding out the malevolent elements of society, leaving only those deemed good. Despite the complexity of their mission, there was an almost mechanical efficiency to their actions. Data Demon was undeterred by the scale of their operation. Instead, he worked on with a renewed sense of purpose, hacking into a federal database that housed the remains of his AI and reprogramming the nanobots with stolen technology. "Hello, old friend," he welcomed as the AI finally booted back to life. Once the AI had compiled, the rest was easy. A thorough scan through the entire internet, and the AI was able to put together a database of every living being on Earth. The night before they were about to unleash the gray goo onto the world, the coalition of superheroes showed up. Data Demon hid under a desk, finishing the last lines of the program as Caretaker fought off his former allies. Though the other heroes had their unique abilities, none could compare to Caretaker's sheer power and cunning. The coalition of superheroes he once stood alongside saw Caretaker's actions as betrayal, and the full force of the team was brought down on him. However, none of them could withstand Caretaker's powers. One by one they fell, until only Caretaker and Fantasy, his equal in power, remained. Data Demon was confident that the nanobots would do their task, as he improved their design over the previous villain's work, and was able to refine the AI's algorithm to the point of near sentience. As buildings crumbled around him, the ranking of victims finished uploading to the bots. They were now ready for deployment. Dee hesitated, closed his eyes, and slammed his hand down on the launch button. A gray cloud flew like lightning out of the box. Fantasy was a brilliant, glowing red being and was currently shooting a plasma beam right into the face of Caretaker. It looked as if Fantasy was on the cusp of defeating Caretaker, when the cloud of nanobots encircled her. In an instant, her molecules had been rearranged and turned into more nanobots. The cloud grew and moved on. As the cloud spread across the globe, it took with it almost 3/4 of the population. The aftermath was stark. Most of the world's population had been eliminated, causing even further deaths due to the collapse of societal infrastructures. Many people starved to death. Dee had never anticipated the scale of orphaned children left behind. Entire cities were left inhabited only by parentless children. Data Demon was overwhelmed by guilt and regret. The orphaned children, the devastated cities, and the loss of human life were all too high a cost for their idea of justice. The gray goo had gone out of control, eventually leaving the planet and disappearing into the cosmos. Data Demon was torn between the success of their mission and the horrifying consequences of their actions. Caretaker, on the other hand, slept soundly that night, knowing the world was safe from evil people. He was finally able to take his retirement.